Welcome back, tech friends. My name's Gareth. This is Tech Check. Today we're checking out the Lian Dan A3. It's an M-ATX case coming in at a very good price of $70, or if you're here in the UK, £75. Offers loads of modularity, adds some humongous support behind this case due to the modularity, the size, the form factor, and there are loads of stuff that you can actually do with it. That being said, I'm going to get my sticky paws on it and give you my 2 cents. We're going to do a build in it, going to share you my thoughts at the end and tell you, should you downsize to M-ATX or potentially upgrade to this case? Let's find out. So on first inspection, the case comes across really nicely. The form factor itself, it's not obviously too small. It's not an ITX case, guys. They're primarily a little bit thinner and a little bit less in terms of length as well. But in terms of size, I'll put those on the screen right now for you. It sits really nicely. I love this steel chassis. I love that it's vented on this side, that side, and at the rear as well. And I think that gives you plenty of options when it comes to the cooling of this particular case. Not to mention, if you chuck in a little bit of RGB in here, then you will be able to see it through. Whilst we're on the subject, it comes in 3 different colours. You've got your black, your white, and then you've got a walnut fronted version as well. You also get a couple of additional options with a glass tempered side panel and a vertical GPU mounting kit as well. With that being said, let's get inside. So to open it up, we can just pull on this tab, and the actual side unit just uses these 3 tabs here that slide in at the bottom and then they click into place. The top, we can just unscrew these 2 screws, slide back and lift up, and then the back panel, a tab again, and that just slides off. Now I am a little bit Lian Li biased, guys. I've got my 011 Dynamic XL just behind the camera, and of all the cases that have come across the desk in the last 4 years, it's still sat up there. And that's normally for 1, 2, potentially 3 reasons. You stop there. Number 1, it's down to value and what you get for your money. Number 2, it's the materials in which Lian Li uses. Really good materials. And number 3, the customer service. I've never had any issues with my particular case, but I've had instances where there's been a few defects here and there, and the return policies and the way that the customer service has sorted it out, absolutely bang on, and kudos to them. With that being said, let's take a look at this actual side panel. Now these 2 side panels, they are not interchangeable. So you can't put this one, which is the rear, on this one because you've got this tab. Unfortunately, well, you've got these ones here as well, and they need to slide in there like that. And if I was to put it in there, well, as you can see, it will fit in, but you've got this tab which is sticking out right like a sore thumb, which is just there, which is not what you want. The actual side panels, like we said, we're made of steel and they're really nicely painted. There's no chips, there's no issues, no defects or anything like that. Really nicely vented as well. As you can see, you're not going to have any issues in terms of airflow. But what I would say is there is a little bit of flex in this particular side panel. I'm not too fussed about that, but just something to be aware of, especially with the more expensive cases, you don't get this. We also get inside our offset bracket for our ATX PSUs. We get our Lian Li goodie box, which is housing all of our screws and clips and everything else. We've also got a GPU sag bracket there as well, which is great to see. If we remove this side fan mount, 1 screw up here and another screw in this corner, you can then open that up and slide that out. We've also got multiple different mounting options for our PSU, dependent on the size and where you want to actually place your power supply. Now, given the fact that this case has been out around 5 months, you probably, if you're interested in this case, looked at multiple reviews and you probably already know about this, but we'll cover these different brackets when we go through the build, and just depends on which one we need. But essentially, what you can also do, if we remove this front panel, just give it a pull up, and as you can see there, really nice light version and it's got a mesh on the back of that. So we'll put that to one side. You can actually remove these two screws here, and this power supply mount here can slide up and down dependent on whether you're placing fans or an all-in-one at the top, or dependent on what size of actual PSU you're actually using. At the front of the case, we've got our power button. We've got separate headphone and microphone jacks. We've got our USB Type-C, and then we've got our USB 3 Type A ports, which are here as well. Great to see that Lian Li's carrying forward all the white cables. So our USB 3, our USB Type-C, our HD audio, and then our front panel connectors, which is there. We've also got our power supply extension cable, which runs to the back of the case and gives us very easy access to apply power. At the rear of the case, we've got our housing for our 120mm fan. We've also got access to our extension slots here for our graphics card, and all we need to do to gain access to them is undo that clip. And as I mentioned before, we also have an opportunity to replace this and actually go for a vertical mount kit that you can upgrade to at any time. Whilst this can house 10 fans, you can put 3 120s at the top, 3 120s at the bottom. You've got another opportunity to mount 3 120mm fans or a 360mm radiator here as well. But again, as you can see, we'd need to move the actual mount for the actual power supply as well. So 3 at the top, 3 at the bottom, 3 at the side, and 1 at the rear gives us 10 120mm fans. In terms of radiator, you can put a 120, 240, 360 at the top, up to a 360 at the side, and you could put a 360mm all-in-one at the bottom. Wouldn't recommend it though. But if you were going for a full water-cooled build, then having a radiator at the bottom wouldn't be a bad shout. So you could have top and bottom 360 radiators. At the bottom, it does come with a magnetic filter as well, which is also really nice to see. And all around, guys, I don't think there's anything to moan about, in all honesty. Build quality top notch. No defects or issues with this particular case so far. And I'm really, really liking the smaller form factor, but the options it gives you with the amount of fans, the radiators, ATX 3 power supplies, and you can actually go for a SFX power supply here as well, which will support obviously the different brackets. The max GPU size is 415mm, so you've got loads and loads of room there, but again, it will depend on what PSU, where you're putting your radiators and everything else. If you're not opting for a radiator and you're wanting to go for a conventional CPU tower cooler, you've got a max height of 165mm as well, so plenty of room there. So enough of the pitter patter. What we're going to do, guys, is we're going to jump on to the actual build. I think this case at $70, I think personally I would more prefer to stick with a more budget build in here. I might go down that particular route, but then again, I have also got some Corsair IQ Link fans that would look nice in this case as well. Whether or not they're white or black, I'm not sure yet. But let's crack on, let's do a build, and I'll share with you at the end, was it a dream or was it a nightmare? Let's find out. I think the one thing that I'm really worried about is that back panel gives you absolutely zero ability to put any cables at the back of here. Be very careful, guys, on how you actually build in this straight off the bat, because that back panel, even though you're not going to be looking at it, it is mesh. There's no depth. There's probably 2.5 mils worth of space between the back panel and where you can actually put any cables. So every one of these cables is going inside of your case. So whether or not this is going to be tidy or not is yet to be, yet to be found out, but we'll see at the end. Anyway, let's go. Inside our box of Lian Li goodies, we have some new clips just in case you break them or you need additional ones. We have our standoffs for our power supply, dependent on which one you're using. Again, they think of everything, and the great thing that I like about Lian is every single thing is actually labelled as well. So these are anti-vibration rings. We mentioned they also include a GPU sag bracket as well. So I've chose some parts. We are going to be going with a B550 and a 5600X build. Asus Prime B550 A Wi-Fi 2, and we are chucking in here an RX 7600. Now we have gone a little bit overkill. I couldn't find a quicker power supply, but it's a fully modular power supply, 850, but you should be able to use a 650 or a 750 just to reduce the size a little. Anyway, right, that's the parts. Full list will be down in the description if you're looking to pick up parts for this particular build. Let's do it. Don't forget your IO shield if it's not inbuilt. So 5600X, 6 core, 12 threads. Open up our socket, look for our little triangle. Match that with the triangle that's on the actual motherboard. Drop it into place, a little wiggle, and return our retention arm. RAM we're going for is 16 gigs, 3600 megahertz, and this is DDR4. Slots 2 and 4, you can see black and grey. On the actual DIMM itself, you'll see that there is a little notch which is just here. We just need to match that notch with our notch on our motherboard. Put one side in and then the other, and then firm push till you hear a click. And the exact same on this side. For storage, we're going with a 1TB 990 Pro. A little bit overkill for this particular build, but I always like to go with Samsung if possible. Lots of other brands out there, and some a little bit faster as well. But I've stuck with Samsung for years and years and years. Don't have any issues. Got lots and lots of reliability, and it'll suit this down to the ground. We also need to ensure that we've got our smallest screw in the world and our standoff. We can line up our M.2, and we know that it wants to go into this one here. We can then just screw that into place. Drop in our M.2 at a 20-degree angle, push forwards, and then that will nicely sit on our standoff. Take our screw, line it up, lock it down into position. Don't forget to install your IO shield before you put your motherboard in. Just pop it into the case, line it up, and then a firm press at the front, sides and bottom. So before we actually go ahead and install our motherboard, we need to think about what we're actually going to be doing here. Am I going to be cooling this CPU with a tower cooler? Or am I going to test the limits of the particular case, and should we put either a 360 at the top or on the side? Me personally, I would always prefer to put one at the actual top. So I think I'm going to use the Corsair IQ Link H150. And I think we're going to put 3 fans up here. We're going to put one at the rear. And then that begs the question, where's the intake coming from? And that means we're going to have 3 down at the bottom. So let's see how we get on. I'm thinking about cables and not being able to hide many in here. This might do us a favour, or could ruin my day. This little bracket at the bottom here that we will need to remove, because we aren't going to be able to install our fans in the correct places if we don't undo these 2 screws. All of our holes nicely align where they should actually go. We also want a 120 at the rear as well. That's going to be set as an exhaust, and then we're going to have our radiator at the top up here. Let's drop in our M-ATX board. Any headers that you have down here, i.e. your HD audio, your front panel connectors, anything whatsoever down here, when you've got these 3 fans installed in the right place, which is there, you have got very, very, very little amount of room down here. So if you are planning on putting 3 fans at the bottom, make sure that you've routed these cables so you've got access. These 3 fans may be the last things that I actually put into this case. So I'm actually going to take the opportunity to secure the motherboard into place now using the 8 screws that's required here. I'm also going to route our front panel connectors, our USB 3 and our HD audio, just to see if we can keep these actual cables in check, because as we've said, any cables that we're going to have need to be housed in this section here. If I've got 3 fans at the bottom down here and I've got a radiator up there, I think the first thing I'm going to do is route these cables, and I'll probably move on to the power supply installation so I can run my 8-pin EPS cable and I'll start to figure out how much room I've actually got. So there we have our motherboard installed. We've got our front panel, our HD audio, our USB 3 all connected. We don't have a USB Type-C connection on this particular motherboard, so I've just folded that to the actual front of the actual case, just down there. Other than that, we're looking quite nice. I think the smartest thing here though, guys, is definitely go ahead, get your power supply installed. Make sure that you run your 8-pin 8+8 or 8+4 EPS power cable, and you can start to see how much room that you're going to have for not only your radiator, the size of graphics card, and potentially what other fans that you can fit in this case as well. Right, onto the power supply. So this is an 850 watt fully modular power supply, guys. It's not huge by any stretch of the imagination, but it does come with our 12 volt high power cable. Not that we need it, but I might even chuck in a 4070. I might chuck in a 4090 just to see what the size options are like. So nice just to have this on hand. We're going to take our PSU bracket, slide that over the top, and you'll see that our 4 holes nicely align. Then we can slide our power supply into the actual case. Now we're down here and we're getting dangerously close to not being able to put any fans down here, but let's just test that one. That does allow us to put that in there, yes. And potentially once this is back in, we can move that up a touch as well. One thing that we do need to make sure of before we install this particular radiator here is we do need to ensure that we've plugged in our power cable. So let's take this out. This is what I'm saying, guys, with this particular case, it's more about planning what you're going to do, where things are going, how you're going to actually do it. So we need to plug that cable into our power supply. Like that. Right, so what I've done, guys, is I've routed my 8-pin EPS down across the top here, because I've figured out that if we put in a radiator up here, the radiator is going to cover a lot of this at the back. So we just need to be careful that we don't put too much pressure on this cable. But if we can run it at the top, then we're going to hide not only the extension or the power extension cable, but also this EPS cable as well. We can't do that for our 24-pin. But we just need to plug that one in here, make sure that that's all the way in, and then what we're going to have to do is try and hide those at the back of the actual PSU unit somehow when there isn't a lot of room up there, but we'll try and figure something out. If not, they're going to have to go right at the bottom down here, and we need to be very mindful of the space required for the 3 fans. Failing that, we may have to go with just 2 fans at the bottom down here. Just depends on if we've got enough room. Onto the all-in-one, we're going to remove our CPU brackets by removing the 2 screws at the top and the 2 screws at the bottom. You'll see that we've got these 4 standoffs here. We're going to take these 4 standoffs and we're going to screw them into place. Next step, we need to remove our cover and we need to remove our Intel mounting brackets. And we need to replace them with our AMD ones. We can take a little bit of thermal paste and pop a pea-sized shape in the middle. We can then go ahead and drop in our radiator. And all we're going to do is hook each one of these over each one of those standoffs. You need to take one of each of these 4 thumb screws and tighten them down. So all we're going to do now is, now we've got all 4 screws on, I'm just going to go around one corner and then the next and tighten them up just a little bit at a time. Now our block is nice and secure onto our motherboard and CPU, we can turn our attention to our radiator. All we have to do is line that up, and we're going to use 12 screws and a washer to hold it into position. And that should look just like that, the washer and then the small screw. Please don't use the large screws, you'll penetrate into the radiator and cause yourself a lot of damage. The reason why I've put the all-in-one this side is because we've got the tubes coming off it. And whilst these tubes are quite bendy, we're going to have such an extreme bend on these particular tubes, and I don't want that, especially coming out here and then bending and all the way around. So we've put on this side. Now the radiator is all the way to this end, and what we've got now is we've got a particular issue where, whilst I can put a fan here, it's catching on these particular tubes. So we are not going to be able to put that fan there. So if you are thinking about copying this, just be mindful that you might be better off just pushing the radiator a little bit further this way, centralizing it a little bit, giving yourself a little bit more room for these tubes. Oh dear. Okay. Oh dear. Right, we've managed to get our 3 120mm fans at the bottom. So what we can do now is, as you can see, they all do line up. So you just need to maneuver them around a little bit, and we'll get our 12 screws in there. To install our graphics card, we just need to undo this thumb screw. Our gate will open. And then we need slots 1 and 2. Just be mindful if you do this, if you take the screw out, the slot will cover or fall out. We've run into our next problem, guys. Our graphics card here is, I would say it's a 3-slot card. And we've got our standard QX120 fans mounted securely, correctly at the bottom. Lift up our all-in-one tubes. We can just disconnect our USB 3 so we don't have any kind of interruptions. And we have an issue. Our graphics card won't fit when we have our 3 fans mounted at the bottom. Let's try the 7600. Let's try that. Now, in terms of thickness, we are a little thinner. The shroud is a little thinner. Let's just try this one. Our 7600 is nicely in. I would say that there is a millimetre between these bottom fans and this graphics card. A millimetre. I think what we'll do is we'll take these 3 fans out of the bottom. We'll take this graphics card out here, and we'll put my 4070 Ti Super back in, and then we'll put this bracket on, and we'll have this on the side with 2 fans. We can't obviously mount the 3rd one because you need to, in order to put 3 in, you need to change the power supply to mount it at the rear. So that's a no-no from me. So, right, let's do that. Right, we'll try again with our 4070 Ti Super. Just enough room at that bottom, which is nice. So absolutely, if you've got a larger graphics card, guys, don't even attempt to put those 3 fans in at the bottom. I'm making these mistakes so that you don't have to go through the hardships of making some expensive mistakes around purchasing, and then the headaches around configuring it all when you come to do it. We're then going to mount our 2 120mm fans on the side as an intake. So just 8 screws. All we're going to do is then run a cable from this side into here. So we've got these 3 connected to these 2. We've got a USB-C into our USB 2 header down here, and that splitter is going to run another USB 2 connection. We're going to connect a PCIe power cable, and then we're also going to attach our 3-pin onto our CPU header at the top there. Let's turn it on, see what happens. Oh, there we go, we've got some fans. But I would say, guys, it looks bloody brilliant. I just think that the form over function side of things is not for me, in all honesty. This is the part, guys, where 100% honesty. And do I like the looks of the case? I absolutely dig it. I think it looks really, really, really good. Okay, I love the form factor, I love the styling, the aesthetics, the materials, the ventilation, the customization. I like the ability to be able to change loads and loads of bits and bobs in here. And that aside, how was it to build in? Given the parts that I chose, not very good. Okay, so some of the things that I don't like, I hate the fact that there's no cable management. It's an absolute afterthought. There is no cable management at all. There's a few tie down points, and apart from that, there is literally nowhere to put any cables at all. They literally just get stuffed in the bottom. So custom cables, only using the cables that you need. A lot of thought process in terms of building in this is going to be needed. Again, it will depend on what parts you're using, what configuration you're using. Are you using an SFX power supply? Are you got a 2-slot graphics card? Are you going for a 240mm all-in-one? Are you going for a CPU tower cooler? The case offers some fantastic specs. That solid panel on the front, for me, you lose a couple of options, but where do you put the actual power supply if you don't have that solid panel? Again, if you've got a new and latest graphics card, anything like a 4070, 4070 Ti Super, etc., which is more than 2.5 slots, no fans at the bottom because you won't have room on a M-ATX motherboard to plug it into your PCIe slot. I'm guessing that's why that side bracket is there, because they know that the graphics card's going to be pulling in fresh air. Obviously, you can mount 2 120s on the side here, or 3 120s, dependent on what power supply you're using. It's very bloody confusing. Quite innovative in terms of hundreds of different options and various things that you can put into this case. And I would honestly say, if you're going for a very simple, straightforward build, and given the fact that this case is $70, and let's just say you wanted a nice £20 CPU cooler, you wanted 3 or 4 fans in it, it would be easy as pie. But when you start tailoring it to 360mm radiators, and you've got large graphics cards, and you've got full-size ATX power supplies, something's got to give. And I'm sick of hearing everybody turn around and saying it's the best thing ever, I'm changing to this and blah blah blah. I'm telling you, I've been building computers for 20 years. I've built thousands, okay? And this was frustrating. Now, the end product itself looks phenomenal, and that's because you can't see behind this panel, which I'll open it up in a second. Yeah, I like the end product. Did I enjoy building in it? Absolutely not. Do I like the materials? Yes. Do I like the looks of it? Yes. Do I like the end product? Yes. Would I recommend this case after my building experience today? No, I wouldn't, and that's the honest truth. If I had a totally different set of hardware and we were going for a much more basic build, then I think it would be a lot easier and a lot straightforward. But yeah, very, very frustrating, guys. Let me just take off this side panel. I've just got to be careful because I need to hold this panel as well. So as you can see here, we've got these two 120 QX fans which are pushing air in. And if I lower this down and just put them out the way to one side for a second. There we go. I don't want to suffocate them. We have also got in here a 4070 Ti Super, which is right at the bottom, pulling air from the bottom of the case. We have got around 1 centimeters worth of feet on here, and we have got a dust filter on here as well. So it's not too much of a bad shout, that's not. We've got this full-size ATX power supply. We've got a 360mm radiator at the top, and everything's working. There is no issues. It's just, from my perspective, this monstrosity down here, and you can't see it, but that's not for me. Really, really, really not for me. Let's put this back in here. I hate it when you've got nowhere to put the cables, yeah? And I get that the form factor dictates it's got to be saving space somewhere, but the cable management's an absolute afterthought with this case. And I think anyone that's looking to do a really nice build in this case, because they love the aesthetic and they love the size of the footprint of this case, is going to be deeply dissatisfied if you don't have custom cables, for instance. If you're not going for an SFX power supply, this was worst case scenario. But let's be honest, a $70 case is going to attract a lot of people that don't want to spend extra money on specialised power supplies, custom cables and everything that goes along with it. So most people expect wham bam, thank you ma'am, everything will do and everything they've got will just fit in, they connect it all and everything's good. It wasn't the case, guys. It took quite a long time just to get this to where it is now. And would I be happy with this? Would I let this go? And absolutely not. No. I would need 2-3 hours worth of time to be able to use 20-30 zip ties, route the cables as good as I can, optimally change the routing of a lot of this stuff. Obviously, I would probably not go with this hardware setup. I'd change the all-in-one to a much easier, probably an Arctic Liquid 3, less cables, less connections as well. But what I'm trying to get at here is you really, really need to think about what hardware you're putting into this case and in what configuration, because I think that you'll come unstuck. This is only my opinion. I love Lian Li, and nothing knocking on the case of the quality, the aesthetics or anything like that. Absolutely fantastic. Just from my perspective, the build in this, I didn't enjoy, but my opinion only. Again, a big shout out to Raymond for sending this case out for a review. It's greatly appreciated. I love not giving controversial verdicts here because it's not about that. It's about sharing my honest opinion with you on what this build's just gone like, and hopefully saving you guys either some grey hairs or a lot of stress when you come to do the same thing. So I appreciate your time, guys. I hope you have a nice Christmas. We are 2 weeks away from Christmas now. We are going to be doing a couple of nice builds over the next couple of weeks, so keep your eyes out. If you've enjoyed this video, then hit that subscribe button. If you didn't, then let me know down below, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much.